Hello, beautiful friend. It is I, Dave Makes Noises, the Rick Moranis of Dungeons & Dragons Storytime on YouTube. Just a quick reminder to please check out our subreddit, r/MrRipper, as it is the hub of our beloved community, and indeed the source of many of the stories we share right here on the channel. That's all for announcements. Now, ladies and gentlemen, ladies and gentledem, what is the weirdest/coolest character concept you thought of? Part 3. The Tale of the Very Short Ogre Cleric. My first, and so far one of my few characters I have ever had the pleasure of playing a whole campaign of D&D through, was a 4th edition game of D&D as an Ogrillian Cleric, fluffed to be just a very short ogre. Anyone who has watched all things D&D may have found my story in the comments section as the second highest thumbed up one. Anyways, back to the story. All of the players had decided to make characters whose gimmicks was based on a joke from ASDF movie jokes. Yes. We had a satyr bard who threw bread at people, as opposed to muffins, an orc who would randomly punch people to level up, and a few others. In a sense, Darius, because I deliberately chose the most inappropriate name for an ogre, was a 6'8" ogre, being hilariously undersized for an ogre. He wasn't even a devoted follower of his god, I forget which, but it was a god of honor and combat, so not inherently evil and very, again, unusual for an ogre. However, he had managed, with an intelligence of 11, again, unusual for an ogre, that money allowed him to buy all the food he wanted, and also he disliked killing weak things, not out of honor, but rather, he just saw no point. Okay, now for the good stuff. Darius also did not believe he used magic, as magic was for soft things, instead believing that his powers were his own natural toughness. And the fact that he could heal himself, well, that meant that he could not die. So, hence the name Darius Bloodmurder, the Immortal. Yeah, my ogre also had delusions of grandeur, but hold on, it gets better. Darius, very early on, showed himself to be not the best damage dealer, but with 19 strength, DM allowed me to pick up enemies and toss them at other enemies as my attack at a turn. Cue me being the party's AoE through hitting enemies with one of their friends, like a bowling ball and pins. We had many adventures, but as this was my first game, I was not the best role player, but I did have my moments. The first big moment came when we explored some ruins and each got some magic loot which the GM had tailored to our characters. Mine had turned out to be a great sword of fire. I then proceeded to keep using my warhammer to my GM's chagrin, to the point he pointed out how the great sword dealt almost 3 more damage on average. I turned to him and said, "It's not blunt, so I don't care," and proceeded to use the flaming sword as a torch, which could not be put out. The next big story was where we entered the capital of the nation, and we each faced a boss tailored to our characters, as the city was attacked in the night in an attempted coup. Mine was a mercenary captain leading the bulk of the invading troops, and I remember vividly how I beat him. He was on a hangman's platform, shouting orders to his troops as a battle between his men and the town guard echoed around us. I approach and declare, "I smash." The GM tells me I need a 19 to beat him. I say no, and I say I am smashing the wooden platform he is standing on. So there is this tailor-made boss on his back after the platform he had been on is shattered. Now how turn order went is that I somehow managed to go first and would hold my action until he tried to get up, then proceed to knock him back down. So this poor captain spent half the night just getting beat down by this ogre, unable to land a hit on him because the ogre refused to allow him to stand up. In the end, the city guard overtook his men, and they just arrested the poor fella after they agreed to pay Darius for his help. And then there was the ogre's assistance in a sneaking mission, where I told my friends I would handle the guards. And they all freaked out, but none of them stopped me. I then proceeded to burst into the guards' quarters with ale, and get them all stinking drunk to prevent them from responding to magical alarm. Then there was the time I smashed open a castle door, screaming his war cry, which was just "War, war, war," over and over again, flanking the enemies inside who had ambushed the party while sneaking in. Yes, my ogre cleric ambushed an ambush by charging through the front gate, as opposed to my friends, who had all opted to sneak in the back. Oh, and then there was the time Darius killed a frost giant by whacking it in the tender regions, and while stunned, grappling an orc and force-feeding it to him to choke him to death, all the while insisting he could never die. And this was all while I acted as the party's moral compass. Yes, Darius was the most moral character in a rather evil money-grubbing party by virtue of seeing wanton murder, kidnapping, and thievery not as criminal acts, but just waste of time. He managed to, in social situations, stop the party being super evil and vindictive by the fact he just told them to just kill people and do what they were paid to do. do. But none of this compares to his most legendary feat. During the final session for the semester at my uni, me and my group were faced with a trap room where hundreds of crossbows were pointed inwards, connected to a winch needed to open the door. Whoever opened it would be left behind to be shot to death by hundreds of armor-piercing crossbow bolts. This was a trap designed to kill the powerful NPC our party had adopted, in a moment of solemn sacrifice, as this was the last test before the big bad. However, before the DM could announce how our NPC was going to sacrifice himself, I say, my ogre steps up to the trap and begins to open the door. When one player yells, "But you'll die!" my ogre grunted and bluntly stated with a grin, "I told you, I can't die," sacrificing himself to save the others. But I am not done. Up until this point, I had always RP'd my character as defiant in the face of being ordered to do something he did not want to do, fighting for his sake and his own personal amusement. Hence, when he was brought before his god, a god of honor and warriors in the afterlife, a god who had only taken an interest in him rather than be actively worshipped, the GM describes to me how the god congratulates Darius on his bravery and honor, and how he will serve him well. Darius is angry that he had been robbed of the fight against the final boss, and now some big glowy guy in armor is telling him how he's going to fight for him, proceeds to level his maul at the god and yell, "I am Darius Bloodmurder. No one tells me what to do." So yeah, the god, with a mixture of annoyance and amusement, throws my character back to the material plane, where the doors which I had previously opened get blown off their hinges as I charge out as a full-plate, maul-wielding little ogre, towering over the big bad guy henchman, and proceed to rush him to help lay the smackdown upon him. And most importantly, he proved without a doubt he was immortal. Honestly, for a first D&D campaign, it is the best I have ever played. I haven't gotten to play them yet, but here, a lawyer barbarian Goliath, a pair of rogues, a mastermind, and an inquisitor, both working together to con a country into making them rich. The mastermind plays himself as a Moriarty to the inquisitor's Sherlock character. The mastermind steals money, making sure to not be evil to the point of execution, and the inquisitor solves his crimes, which they both have set up in advance, making sure to arrest him every once in a while. Eventually, they both build up a strong enough reputation, then live rich and happy for the rest of their lives. I've thought about playing a skeleton before, perhaps a wizard or a warlock. Anyway, as I understand it, merely existing on the material plane is painful to the undead. All the positive energy from living beings is like being sunburned. So the skeleton is just trying to get to the Shadowfell without getting mobbed by those pesky townspeople. Half-orc wizard was actually a fighter who thought he was a wizard and didn't really understand how spells work. He'd cast magic missile by firing his crossbow, sleep by hitting an NPC in the head, fireball with a Molotov, lesser death was stabbing, greater death was stabbing more, and so on. So he'd walk up to an enemy and begin his incantation, speech, and dance as he cast his School of Evisceration spell. Yes, I made up custom magic schools. Something like this. "From unholy depths you seek to climb. May this lance pierce your mortal time." While hip thrusting. I cast power word death. Then he'd stab the person. Job the Magnificent died when his HP didn't match his ego. An artificer Kuatoa that doesn't actually know how to be an artificer, they just put together materials and their immense psychic power makes it function how they think it'll function. Now he goes around believing to be an artificer, his immense psionic abilities making the things he crafts work, e.g. he makes a boat that is just rope and sticks, haphazardly thrown together. This should collapse in a second, but it is a functional boat. I came up with Reizo. Reizo? We're gonna roll with both. Nah, just kidding, it's Rizzo from the movie Grease. I came up with Rizzo, the masochistic sorcerer with a death wish. He was a sorcerer who used his powers for stupid shit like intimidation, stealing, and other less than good acts. After Talon attacked, he decided to stop being a criminal. He took an oath that he had to die heroically to come to terms with his sins. He's overly positive to the point where people start thinking he's insane. At some point, he tries to die in comedically dumb ways due to thinking his goal is impossible. Still haven't had the chance to play him yet. He was based off of my webcomic character, also named Rizzo. I have two. One being a friend of mine's character that I'm helping her design. I like to be as creative and unconventional as possible with my PCs. I've had an Aarakocra gunslinger, a Firbolg rogue, a Warforged paladin, an 11-year-old archfey changeling warlock, and many, many more. Seriously, I think I'm up to 17 backup characters now. just can't stop, just can't spell rogue. But the character I want to talk about here is my ranger, who is a green-skinned goblin raised by elves. How she got adopted is a huge part of her backstory and really long, so the short version is that the majority of her tribe was slaughtered by a revenge-crazed noble, and Elrie was the only one that survived the massacre. She was taken in by her 2 elf dads and taught how to hunt, fish, forage for food, all that good ranger stuff. But her parents sent her away from home when the noble returns, looking to finally finish what he started. So she leaves and starts traveling the world with an adventuring party. My friend's character is a bit more lighthearted for now. She doesn't have a solid backstory yet, so I'll just tell you about what she looks like and stuff. She is a green dragonborn sorcerer who is a selective, drunk, and nervous flirty type. But there's a catch. There's a catch. She only stands at a solid 3 feet 4 inches tall, and her subclass is Draconic Bloodline. So she's got twice the power for her poison breath, and is small enough that she sneaks fairly well. She's just really clumsy. And since I'm designing her for my friend, I've made her black robe, which is lined with a leopard print pattern inside, long enough that if she isn't careful, she trips over it and falls on her face. I've also started the joke that she isn't really a dragonborn, she's just a kobold with draconic ancestry that paints herself green and says she's a dragonborn, because why not? Her name is Snob, and she has very quickly stolen my heart as my favorite party member thus far. Hello, my infinite interstellar Sufganyot, and thank you for watching this video to the very end. In case you have been missing our D&D livestream the past couple weeks, now would probably be the time to let you know that we have migrated over to twitch.tv/fireanddice. The link will be in the description. Twitch seems to be the logical place for a Dungeons & Dragons game to be streamed, after all. Now, our storytelling streams on Sundays will remain here on the YouTube channel as they have been, and as always, if you're looking to share your story and have it professionally read by myself or Brian, feel free to do so on our subreddit, r/MrRipper. Make sure you spell rogue correctly, and as always, if you have a weird, cool character you'd like to share with us, please feel free to do so in the comments section of this video. Again, please be sure to spell rogue correctly. If you're a DM or a player looking for a group, you may have some luck on Mr. Ripper's Group Finder Discord server. And if you love the channel and are looking for ways to support us, you may wish to consider buying some merch down below. If you love me and want me to be happy, please check out my website, www.davemakesnoises.com, or you can follow me on Instagram or TikTok at DaveMakesNoises. Now that the business is out of the way, what is an act of kindness you can do for yourself today? Let me know in the comments below. That's all for this one, kiddos. Please sub for Nat 20s.